Hello, this is Mike and welcome. We have a Ruger Airhawk Elite in the shop today. Let's take a closer look. So I had this gun for a while. I bought it off the previous owner who did a bed liner spray camo job on it. And I got to tell you, it really looks good and it feels good. At the time it was missing a safety and I never really got into shooting it or doing anything to it. So somebody bought it from me and asked me to put a 22 cal barrel on it. But the Humerex messed the order up, and we wound up just putting a Loather Walther barrel in it and 20 cal. Now, as far as the difference between Diana 34 and a Ruger Airhawk is the fact that the piston's a little bit bigger, and that's only because the receiver tube is a little bit bigger. But inside the tube, it's the same diameter, and also the air swept volume in the air chamber is the same. So other than that, the trigger, the Chinese did their own little thing, the trigger, while the RWS did their thing, and it actually has a real sear catch that catches the piston, where the Chinese one doesn't. It has something different, what I call two plates. There should be some films on that later. So it's going to be a little hodgepodge of what we found, what we did, and some shows and tells. We did the trigger mod also on this. So I will say, if you do a trigger mod on your gun, make sure that the safety works and that it can't fire with the safety on. That means if it does, that you are way over adjusted. So back it off. Anyway, this is all done, and we did a 14-inch Loather Walther 20 cal barrel. We used the Macari TK barrel brake, and we did a knurl front cap. And below the cap is two little baffles for sound dampening. Over and all, the barrel was 14 inches, and overall, now with the shroud, it's 16 inches. Coming in feet per second, we are getting around 671. I looked online, and Straight Shooters was getting in a Diana 34 22 cal with 14.3 grain around 619. So we were using the exact, it's the 13.73 grain there, and we're getting 671, so we should be on the money at my elevation of 3,100 feet. Well, it looks pretty good. I have some clips for you. Some of them are a little long, some of them I got rid of. Anyway, enjoy, and thanks for hanging out. Take care and be safe. Well, here we are. We have the barrel removed from the gun. The Chinese barrel and the entire gun is really good solid steel. It may not be as nice as a Viroc, but man, it is really good material. So now these copies have a slanted breech. They're copies of the RWSs with the slanted breeches, and we're going to have to make ours just like that in order for it to work out properly. Here you can see the barrel block maybe a little bit better. You can see the slant on there, and we have to configure the new barrel for that slant, which we can take care of. But right now we have the new barrel, the .20 cal barrel, set up in the lathe. Now to do that, I had to make a pin, as you could call it, for the bore size of 20 cal pin, and that way we can read our gauge off of the inside diameter of the bore. And I'm ready to go. So it looks pretty good on our 4-jaw chuck there. I'm happy with that. I don't see much run out there. It looks really good. Maybe a half a thou if that. But anyway, we're going to take care of that off camera and then get to our next spot there. I would like to mention I got a lot of barrels over there, but all of them are bad. But anyway, we'll see you on the next clip. And the crown's done. So we went up to 600 grit from 320, 220, 320, 400, and then 600. So once you have your crown done, your profiling, and then your little chamfer here on the lands and grooves, that's to clear the lands and grooves and cut them off smoothly. Then you go back with some lapping compound, looks like that, and one of your lapping tools that you made, and you go into that little center crown off the lands and grooves, and it smooths all the edges down. And then once everything's cleaned off, then you bring in your Q-tip. If there's anything that's catchy, say a burr, it'll grab your Q-tip for you. And you just check it like that, stick it in and pull it out. Stick it in and pull it out. And we are good to go on this. Maybe I'll zoom in. I don't think you can actually see how it looks. So let's get a little closer for you. Hope I don't get it out of focus. Now, some guys will obviously take a screw gun and a brass screw and a head, and they'll get in there, and you know that does the job for their needs. But if you have a lathe and you have a barrel, you can go right off of the inside of the bore, which is obviously the better thing to do. And that's what we did. I don't know, we'll get you a little closer maybe. So it's nice and shiny. It also has recessed. I like to recess the crowns, that way they're protected. Well, we'll see you on the next clip. Well, here we are ready to reassemble. Now, some of the things I can't share. We have our new custom fitted spring guide out of Delrin. It's made properly for what we're going to use. The barrel is in the block, 20 cal barrels in the block. I wasn't very happy with this particular barrel, but out of all the barrels that I checked out of the 20 cal, this one was the one that was a little bit more promising. I did do a light choke on it, and we're just going to have to see how this performs. Normally I like a nice snug pellet to bore fit, and I didn't have that with this. Now, as far as doing the barrels, you have to do them carefully and you have to do them gradually, because you can easily change the bore size of what's going on with the bore, believe it or not, simply by machining it, or however it fits the barrel block itself when it gets press fitted on with your locking agent, or how when you do the drill out and then repin it. Now this one was pinned twice because of the way I did the slanted breech, and there's the slanted breech you can see. And this time I gave a little bit more of a breech seal, something you can work with. If it turns out that it's a little bit too much for the gun, I can always belt sand the bottom of the breech seal down and then put it back, rather than trying to find and make shims for it to raise it up. So that's all done. So we're going to have to see how this performs. I guess we talked about the crown in another video, but that's all done, and it's done very nice. It's also done with a 4-jaw chuck. Now, guys do this with a screw gun, I should say like a cordless drill and a brass screw, and they use the head, and they use all kinds of different things, and they can re-get their crown done. But that's okay. It'll get you by. It's not bad. But this is the proper way to do it, the way we did it here. But at any rate, you really want the crown on the lands and grooves to be totally even. So when all the lands and grooves where they cut down on an angle, you want that to be even. Now, their guns are going to shoot just fine, and they have no problems with it. I'm just saying, this is the next step up above that. This is the proper way to do it. But if you have a screw gun with a brass screw and you're using that to get yourself some type of crown and chamfer, knock yourself out, and I'm sure you're going to be okay. Now, as far as the rest of the gun, this one had one little issue. Now remember, these Chinese guns, Mike Melick out there, he's dealt with the Chinese guns. They are really nicely made, and the material is very good steel. The fork and barrel lock up on this is absolutely outstanding, and I got to tap it in to get it on, or else I can't get it on. And that tightness, is nothing wrong with that. Here's the fork washers. I have to clean them up, but look how nice and thick they are. Everything the way it's made is hunky-dory. You can take it apart and work on it without any problems. I did find one issue with the gun so far, and that was right here. Something happened at the factory. Look, things happen. So it was sticking up here. So I just knocked it down with my Dremel tool, and then we honed this tube where you normally would hone it. You would hone it under here because your piston seal is going to be coming up through here, and you want any little place that could shave or nick it to be smooth. So that was honed right under there. All the cock and slot arm underneath here, this cock and slot arm area here, was lightly honed. You don't want to take a lot of material away. You just want to lightly smooth it down. Some guns, if you take too much away, if you get carried away when the cock and arm's in there and you ride like that, you'll have this bouncing where it's metal to metal, and you'll get the cock and arm kind of clanging. If it happens, if you get carried away, it happens, but I'm just trying to tell you, you want to smooth this area out. You don't want to go crazy. And then you have your holes here, and you have under here, and this hole here. Anytime you have one of these guys sticking around, you're going to have to double check to make sure everything is smooth. So when you finally get your piston seal going up and in there, you've got a good chance of not nicking it. Now, as far as the tube goes, that's all been cleaned out. It's been honed out. Now, I did, on the bottom of the piston, let's see if you can actually get that in the camera. I don't know. We're going to try it. See, maybe you can. Maybe you can see down in the bottom there. I don't know. It was kind of rough down there. So what I did, I honed the very base, the bottom out. And then I took a chamfered bit and did the Venturi air chamber porthole and dished it out. Not a whole lot, but just a little something that it didn't have. And as well as this side, maybe I can get a flashlight on that, on the air chamber porthole. I smoothed that out right there. Let's see if you can get in there and see. I smoothed that area all out, and I dished that air chamber porthole out very slightly. If you do any of that, you want to make sure it's very slight and you didn't cause a raise where your piston seal is going to, your breech seal is going to be rubbing on that. Make sure you didn't cause a raise in the metal. So this is all ready to go. We're going to put it all together. Next clip, we're going to talk about these triggers, how to make them a little bit better. You'll find on these pistons here, they're heavy duty, but the rods move a little bit, and that's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. But boy, they stamp the heck out of them. They ain't going anywhere. But that's the nice thing about the Chinese gun. Number one, it's inexpensive. Number two, it's made with quality steel, and the fit up is good, rock solid good. The rest is up to you, what you want to do with it. Now, I'm sorry I can't show what I'm going to do with it. I can't give everything away because I do special things when I work on people's guns, and I'm just showing you the ins and outs of this particular rifle. Well, with that said, I'm going to go to another clip. We'll talk about the trigger. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you on the next clip. Okay, I'm going to try to go through this trigger as fast as we can. Now, the nice thing about the trigger is you can do something to it. You can mod it. This screw here is in the wrong place. Let's look at this and see what I did. Now, whatever I do is what I do. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm sharing with you what I did, and I am not responsible for what you do to your gun. That is all on you. Anyway, you have the trigger blade. It's a nice aluminum blade, and the screw that you adjust to make the trigger better is too far up on the lever's pin, the hinge pin. So let's take a look at that. We'll pull the trigger out. Here's the pin right there for the trigger. So I'm going to push up underneath while we wiggle it. Now remember, you got that big fat spring there, so you got to be careful. Pull that pin out of there and get that trigger blade off. There. Now here's what the spring rests on this side of the block, and on this side the spring rests on the nub right there. Let's see if you can see it. And that's what keeps it centered. So here's your screw right there, and here on the lever, let's get the lever up there. You can see that shiny spot right there. That's what the screw's hitting, and you can see how close it is to the hinge. It's too close, and it makes it harder to push that lever down and out of the way. Now that lever is also the sear catch that holds what we call a trap door, which is the nuts and soup of the entire trigger. So let's get to that real quick. So on the other side here, there's two plates and a spring and the safety. You can pull the sleeve off, and then you'll see the nut here for your rear stock, and then you have your hinky part, I'm going to pull this nut out of here real quick. Now the nut is radiused because it sits on a radius. It sits down in there on a radius part, which is that black barrel sleeve there. So you got to put it back the way it came out. Then you have this safety here, a half moon piece, a spring, and the part that's inside the safety that the spring sits on back in here. We'll get that in a minute. But for now, I'm just going to slide this back because I overstepped. So there's your lever that the screw on your trigger blade runs up against, and the further you push the lever down, the further it pushes the catch on the trap door towards the edge to where it's ready to fire. So you're basically adjusting the sear catch so that it's not caught so much. You're pushing it out closer to the edge, and that's what makes it quicker to fire. So at any rate, let's take a look at that. I will pull this off, and then we will take this guy out. But in order to do that, it's a half moon piece with the spring on it that we talked about. You just pull it out like this. Make sure it doesn't go flying. Be careful. And it looks like that. Now you'll see back here, there's a nub. We'll look at that in a minute when we take that out. That's what the spring sits on, that nub back there. And up here, it sits on the half moon piece in my finger. And that has a nub. And that's what the spring sits on that. So there's that. We'll put that down. And now you got this area here. You have the thumb safety. Pull that out. That has a part in it. And that part has the nub that we were just talking about that the spring sat on. Let's see, where are we here? It's hard for me to tell where we are. Maybe you can see it now. But at any rate, that just sits in here. Just like this. You'll notice the U shape in the middle. That's where your pins for your receiver goes through, so that needs to be clear. This is a flat spot, and there's the tit that the spring sat on. It goes in here like this, and it sits on the shelf down in here on this side, and then this side just sits between the two plastic forks there. You get them even like that, and you're done. So put that aside and get down to the nitty-gritty here. So the trigger has two plates. There they are right there. Now this is the side of the trigger block that the piston comes through, and this side of the trigger block is the butt of the stock side where the thumb safety is. The two trigger plates are right here. They come out. And pay attention because this is the important part. There's two plates with holes drilled through them, and if you line them up together, you'll notice at the top, line them up at the top, you notice that the holes do not line up in the center. That's for a reason. So the one plate has the hole facing the bottom when it drops into your trigger block. The other plate has a tit, and the tit is beveled on the one side. Now, I don't know if you can see that or not. So that needs to face the butt of the stock, and the tit also goes down. So that's how they are when you go to drop them into your gun. So what's happening with the two plates that are off center as far as those holes, the stem of the piston is beveled on such a degree that when it goes into the two plates, it bangs into the two plates kind of rudely. It grabs the plate that is now not perfectly centered, and it shoves it down because it's moving it. It's making it center, and because the plate is moving out of the way, it's lining itself up. And when it does, it allows us to go all the way through. Now the plate with the tit that's moving is moving into a trap door. So the trap door is swinging out of the way because the plate with the tit is smacking into it. Really rude. Now once the piston gets past this part and over here to where it's much more narrower, the trap door that has that spring on it that was rudely pushed out of the way starts to shove itself back into the plate with the tit. And when it does that, it now locks the plate because it pushed it up, and it keeps this piston from firing. Remember, you have a tremendous spring between the 2 points. Now the piston's locked, but man, there's a lot of pressure wanting to fire that piston, but the trapdoor's locked, and it's holding the plate with the tit at bay, and the plate with the tit cannot move. Now, once you pull that trigger, you are releasing the catch on the trapdoor, and all that pressure from the spring, when this thing is cocked, is now pushing this way, and it actually, because of the way this is shaped, it forces that plate, which is not lined up typically, up and out of the way. The trapdoor can't be is no longer held because you just released the catch. The trapdoor swings out of the way, the plate gets pushed down where the trapdoor was, and now the holes are in alignment and this thing goes flying. How it doesn't get jammed is beyond me, but it's all worked out to do what it does. And that's how the trigger works. So if you see anything on your piston that doesn't look right, you can take your wire wheel on your grinder, or a wire wheel hooked up into your cordless, and you can smooth it with the wire wheel. Wire wheels will smooth your stuff down without removing material if you do your part. Same thing with these plates. These plates are designed the way they are, so make sure they go back the way we talked about, with the tit towards the butt, with the bevel side facing the butt of the stock. And if you see something there, there's a slight radius there. Everything is done the way it is on purpose, so you can smooth them over and clean them up if you need to. Now, down here, let's take a look. You have a spring that works the lever / sear. Let's take a look at that real quick. This is what's giving you your trapdoor catch tension, or your lever tension. See that? Where are you? There you go. That's better. If it's too much, you can possibly maybe take a coil off, but whatever you do, it has to be in there with some tension. It just can't be just making it, or else nothing's going to work properly. And remember, what you do is on you. Now, as far as the trapdoor, did we take a look at that? Let's see if we can see that trapdoor and the catch. Where are we here? There we go. The piece with the square nub is the trapdoor, and here you can see the catch is holding the trapdoor. That's what we're talking about. It's quite interesting how they made these things. Now I'm going to push this lever out of the way, and now you can see that the trapdoor is no longer caught. Let's see, where are we here? Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't, I don't know. Trapdoor is no longer caught. But if you're going to put everything back, when you got to put these plates back, let's get them right. Hold down. This is the first one towards the front of the stock. Here's the one with the tit, with the beveled part facing the butt. I have to take and turn it. There it is there. They go in like this. I did notice that they have to go in together. Why? They just don't seem to want to go in separately. It's just enough room. You'll see now that this sticks up since the catch is not holding the trapdoor. Just push down on it and listen. You just heard the catch grab the trapdoor. Now it's holding it. So now she's ready to go as far as the reinstall. Now you just take this guy here that we talked about, that had the nub there for the spring. It's all together. This is sitting on a shelf. Drop it down, line it up so it's even here in the space is clear. And then you can put that in here, just like that. And this should be a little lower because you have that half moon piece going in the slot, so this has to be a little lower. Then line up your half moon and your spring. Get that together. There's your half moon with your little nub there. Put the spring on it. Drop it in there. That's going to look like this. Put it on that nub that we were just talking about. Right there. Like this. And just be careful. Pull it back and get the half moon piece into the slot. Now, once it's in there, it should stay. It shouldn't pop anywhere. And this time, the spring is actually fairly straight. But sometimes you got to manipulate the half moon a little bit over, or sometimes you got to manipulate the part back here over, and sometimes you even got to move the spring over a little bit to get it straight. You want it at least straight. So now you got that. It shouldn't pop out. The rest is easy peasy. Turn around and drop that nut back into the slot here. Remember, it sits on that radius of the barrel there, so there's a radius on the nut that has to match that. Drop it in there like that. And then you can put the sleeve back on just like that, and that'll keep everything from falling out. So we want to get our trigger blade back. Now, I don't know if we talked about it, but the screw that goes in here for the blade is now going to go in here. Should have done that first. Where you got this area. On the other side of this trigger, you'll see there's this bar. Right? Now, I checked it out. To me, it didn't seem that that bar was riding on the lever at all. To me, it seemed like it was only there to give this support because it's all been channeled out. So you cut that out with the Dremel is what I did, and that'll give you room to put the new screw, drill and tap it right there. I use a 3mm screw by 0.5 pitch. And this one you can throw out or just back it off. It's not going to do anything. It's only going to be a 1-screw job. So for there, once you get it all done, you can put the spring on the trigger there and get it on that nub. And then you go put it back and put your pin in. Remember, the spring from the trigger blade sat on that little guy. Get it on there and then line up your hole in the trigger blade with the hole on the trigger block and stick your pin in. It's beveled down first and in. Sometimes they're a little stiff. You got to wiggle it around, and once you do, it'll finally go through to the other side, and there she is. Now the safety on this is right here. When this gets cocked, it comes out like that. Let me put it back. It comes out. Where are you here? Comes out like that, and it won't allow the trigger blade to go down. See that? That's what the safety looks like. When the safety's off, this is out of the way, and now the gun will fire. So when you go to put this into the gun, let's do it real quick. You may have to squeeze the trigger, and you'll hear it click, and then you'll be able to cock the gun. But the last tip I'll give you is right here. When you go to put this all back, look at the holes for lining things up. Sometimes when you look at this rear stock bolt hole down in there, that could throw you off because that's not always perfectly center. So look through here, see when that looks lined up, and before you stick your pins in there, get a punch that will go through from one side to the other and wiggle that till it comes through. That'll make sure you're in a U-shaped slot here and you're not going to break the safety. I think that's what the guy did originally who had this gun before. Then you can take your pin and push your pin in, which will push this out as you do it, and do the same back here. Make sure you wiggle it and get it through, and now you know you're clear of this. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Well, thanks for hanging out. We'll go to our last clip, I believe. Take care. Well, here's the shot test. The gun's accurate and better than I am, that's for sure. This is 51 feet or 17 yards. It's nothing to sneer at. It's very hard when you get to a certain age to really hold it where it needs to be in order to get that hole in a hole. But she's capable, and I'm really happy with that. Anyway, let's go inside and take another look at the Ruger Airhawk Elite with a 20 cal barrel. Well, the gun looks great. It feels great. It's very smooth, it's very tight, and it's very accurate. More accurate than I am. I think the stock looks fantastic with the bed liner spray. It has a nice feel to it. The guy did a really nice job on that too. So here we have a Ruger Airhawk, Chinese-made rifle. The steel is great. The machinery specs and how they machine everything is absolutely fantastic. Hatson, you can learn a lot if you only use the right metal and took notes on the machinery that they do. So as far as the gun goes, it's a perfect shooter at the, 670 feet per second in this 20 cal pellet. It's a light gun. I think with the scope, it would probably be around 8 pounds, 6 ounces, or a little bit more. The pellet to bore fit on this, I almost didn't use this barrel. It was right on the edge. But with the power level of the gun, the barrel will actually perform like this one did. So if you increase the power of a gun, say if you go to a different gun, mid-size Magnum of 800 feet per second and higher, you're going to need a better barrel. And as far as barrels go, this one was 14 inches, and the guy that commissioned me to do it wanted it actually shorter, but I talked him out of it because I don't like doing short barrels. because you can add extra recoil to the shot cycle with a short barrel. It depends on the swept volume, depends on the power of the gun, and it depends on the pellet to bore fit. So for instance, if you have a mid-sized Magnum of 800 feet per second, I wouldn't use that barrel. I would be looking for a snug pellet to bore fit all the way through, nice and consistent and smooth. This barrel here is more like an R9 barrel, where a lot of them are just a light pellet to bore fit with a good choke on the end. So let's take a little closer look. Here we have a brass pin on the barrel block. I think I'm going to be using steel from now on, and just do the steel so it blends in with the barrel block. There's the Macari TK brake. I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up, but there is the knurled cap that I smoothed over so it wouldn't be so rough. So I'm going to wrap this up and get this over to the owner. He's really going to like this. And as far as the trigger goes, we did make the trigger better. It still has some travel, and then she fires, but that's pretty much what an RWS T06 trigger does as well. Anyway, take care. Thanks for hanging out. See you on the next one.